This is always a wonderful, well, it's always a rough time of year, but it's always a wonderful night because people are so small from the presentations. So the Environmental Studies Senior Capstone Seminars are the culmination of a semester of very hard work, but also we think of it as kind of the culmination of the ES major, the Gallatin Partnership, a full liberal arts environmental studies major. These are really distinctive projects in that they're integrative applied. We deeply believe that environmental problems are best solved with interdisciplinary tools and collaboration so we can work off of diverse strengths and methodologies, and these are examples of this, kind of on-the-ground examples of applied integrative problem solving. We have a set of really esteemed, seasoned environmental professionals who lead these capstones. They're all remarkable in their own right. I could say a lot, but just so you know briefly who they are. Kizzy, whose capstone will go first, Kizzy Charles-Guzman, is an adjunct instructor in environmental studies, Deputy Director of Social and Economic Resiliency in the Mayor's Office, adjunct faculty in Columbia Sustainability Management MS program, and she serves as the Integrated Capstone Workshop Advisor there. And Kizzy was also won the 40 Under 40 award for the New York City and State Magazine this year. Brendan Noakes is the founder and director of SolarSeek, and also adjunct instructor at Department of Environmental Studies. SolarSeek works in as a consultancy for companies looking into solarize their real estate. Ayanna Johnson is a marine biologist, policy expert, conservation strategist, and the founder of Ocean Collective, a strategy consulting firm for conservation solutions grounded in social justice. So the format is we're going to have a half hour per capstone, 20 minutes presentation, 10 minutes Q&A. Kizzy's will be first, developing a waste management strategy for suburban nature preserve. Brendan's will be next, developing solar projects across the United States. Ayanna's will be last but not least, urban ocean conservation in New York City case study. We ask you to fill out these feedback forms, one for each of the capstones, and we'll gather them at the end. You give them to me or Mari or Taylor. Taylor is here. That's really valuable feedback for each of the groups. And if you're in one of the groups and you haven't filled out a media consent form, if you could also do that and hand it to one of us, that would be wonderful. So without further ado, embracing waste.
Hey everyone, we're so glad you are here today. So our group was tasked with preparing a waste management strategy for T-Town, which is an educational center located in Westchester County of New York State. Today, myself, Isabel, and Robert, we will be presenting on behalf of our group, and we will be sharing some of the findings with you. Today we will go over a little bit about our client. We will talk about the motivations and what was required of us as a capstone group and what our deliverables were for the client. We will run you through the methodology that we used and take you into the specifics of some of the case studies, and then we will take you through the specific tailored list of 7 recommendations that we made to the client. Now the first thing I want to do is tell you a little bit about T-Town. So T-Town is an educational center, and it's also a nature preserve, and it is a small organization with 16 full-time employees, 11 part-time employees, and about 30 seasonal employees. They manage 1,000 acres of forest land, and they also manage 15 miles of hiking trails. Throughout the year, they have several events such as weddings and also an annual summer camp that they host on site. In addition to the nature preserve and their general working offices, T-Town also has certain residential apartments in its premises. So last year, the Columbia Capstone team helped T-Town develop a strategy to make their energy usage more efficient. This year, T-Town wanted to focus on waste. Since they are an environmental organization, they do want to be a pioneer of environmental sustainability for the Westchester community, and thus they reached out to the NYU Capstone Group. T-Town has several different waste streams currently that they're producing. The main waste stream comes from their office, which basically includes a lot of paper, plastic. They also have food scraps coming in from there. Their second waste stream is that they do manage 1,000 acres of forest land, and as such they have a lot of biomass, which includes woods, twigs, leaves, and even invasive species that do need to be discarded properly. After applying the Columbia team's recommendations, T-Town had to go through several changes in their energy infrastructure. So they have recently, once they apply those recommendations, they will have a lot of construction, demolition, and e-waste, which is hazardous in nature and has to be managed completely differently from the other two streams. And finally, during their events, since they're attended by more than 300 people, they produce very large quantities of waste during short time spans, and as such, separate management is even required for those kinds of waste. So for our report, we wanted to give T-Town a tailored set of recommendations that were very specific for 4 of these specific waste streams. We began by a general literature review of all the data that was out there regarding waste management plans and general practices of waste management. We then developed a criteria to narrow our research down to specific case studies that were more applicable to T-Town. Throughout these specific case studies, we studied the frequency of recurring initiatives to formulate a best practices list, as certain techniques are used across several sectors. And then we prepared a preliminary set of recommendations. We ran this set of recommendations through our client, and we received some very specific feedback from our client. Once we incorporated that feedback, we were able to finally present them with a tailored set of recommendations. So in our initial case literature review, we started off with 69 case studies. These included different sectors such as government, non-profit, for-profit, as well as academic. Once we developed our case criteria, we were able to narrow it down to 10 exemplary case studies, which we referenced throughout the report that we submitted to the client. In addition to these 10 exemplary case studies, we also submitted a list of 20 toolkits, and toolkits basically are very specific how-to guides about managing specific types of waste. So for our case criteria, we divided our studies into 2 main sectors, government and nonprofit. For the government sector, only the cases that that were part of the United States and had a population density of less than 200,000 and had a published waste management plan were selected. And for the nonprofit sector, we only selected cases that had an environmental mission, they had infrastructure for visitors, and they had educational goals, and they were also land managers like T-Town. We did this because we wanted these cases to be very, very close to T-Town's needs and what their capabilities are, and as such, we used this specific criteria to narrow it down. So once we applied our criteria, these were our 10 exemplary cases. 6 of them are government and 4 of them are nonprofits. You might be wondering why 6 of them are government cases, considering government waste management infrastructure would be very big for a small organization like T-Town. But governments actually do a better job of publishing their waste data. They also set very specific milestones, and they have more sustainability information that we believe is very useful for T-Town when they set their own waste management goals.
After meeting with the client for the first time, they noted the importance of managing e-waste, construction demolition waste, as well as the invasive species waste that exists on their property. Considering this, we decided to add additional case studies to our research that didn't fit our stringent criteria, but were still relevant to T-Town's overall goal. These are the additional relevant cases that we selected. Okay, so after assessing all of the cases that we chose, we analyzed the best practices that occurred within each. This graph shows the initiatives and how frequently they occurred within our case studies. So some of the initiatives include policy, education, conducting waste audit, etc. We use these initiatives to inform our final recommendation for the client, and we made it as tailored as possible to consider the other topics that they mentioned at our meeting. Now we're going to move into our recommendations, and because of the time constraint, we will only be able to talk about a few, but these are our key ones. Robert.
Okay. We identified a set of essential strategies that must be done if T-Town is committed to reducing their waste production, increasing the diversion rate from landfills, and engaging the greater Westchester community. Because of how prevalent these best practices were in our exemplary case studies, we structured our recommendations as either essential or modular. Essential recommendations were common best practices found in the assessment of successful waste management strategies. They're effective in reducing overall waste production and are generally low or no cost and tend to be successful, sequential in implementation. The team defines modular recommendations as being beneficial additions to T-Town's waste processes, but are not required for the functioning of the overall reduction strategies. The team suggests that the 4 essential recommendations be performed in sequence, with the waste audit and green team funneling into the waste diversion, setting a waste diversion goal, and then drafting policy. Modular recommendations can and should be negotiated in terms of implementation priority by the green team and administration. So, the first of our essential recommendations is to conduct a waste audit, or also known as a waste characterization assessment. Knowing what types and how much of each type of waste is essential in creating and producing an effective waste reduction strategy. 9 out of 10 of our exemplary cases used a waste audit as the basis of their waste reduction strategy. Currently, T-Town has no waste stream data publicly available or available at all, which emphasizes the importance of performing this initial waste audit, because you can't manage what you don't understand. Although we can predict that it has a lot of organic waste as a nature preserve and education facility, it's still necessary to have this initial waste audit to establish a baseline and identify areas of reduction for the other waste streams. We, the team, researched a Zero to Go, an educational, sustainability educational organization that provides basic carding services that would be available to perform this initial waste audit and provide high quality waste audit profile. So, the next, if the waste audit is the foundation for an effective waste management strategy, then the green team would be the pillars as they engage and implement the initiatives themselves among the community. 9 out of 10 of our exemplary case studies use the green team to implement and track progress through waste reduction strategies. In the past, T-Town has had a green team, but very challenged with issues of turnover and cohesion. Our proposal to address this previous challenge is to empower those involved in the green team by giving them voice in the policy drafting phases of our waste reduction strategies, and also giving them power to use these green events and organize them into engaging community events. For example, in these pictures, you see a waste audit performed by Lansing, Michigan that used the tedious task of separating waste and quantifying it into an engaging game where they collected trophies like this doll, which is very cute. And they also collected other things than dolls. And by putting interesting knickknacks at their sorting station, they were able to engage volunteers, staff, and the third party who performed this waste audit with them. Not only that, but the staff that were involved in this waste audit learned how to do it by themselves, so they could continue to do it without the assistance of the third party to ensure and track progress with the waste reduction goals, and to do it on site independently. Okay. With the waste audit as the data foundation, the green team acting as the human motivator, a waste diversion goal must be decided upon. 8 out of our 10 case studies set a waste diversion goal in order to create momentum, assess progress, and track milestones. We recommend setting an initial 40% waste reduction goal in order to maintain an impactful but flexible waste reduction plan. While setting a goal may seem arbitrary, it's important because it sets the waste reduction timeline, informs how stringent policies should be, and makes a statement. An example of an extremely aggressive waste diversion goal is the Department of Interior's National Parks Waste Management Plan, which aims to cut waste by 50% per year. Yeah, it's pretty aggressive. This progressive goal may not be fully realizable, but it stresses the importance of waste reduction and is communicated to the park users via integration of waste education into the park curriculums for the visitors.
So currently, T-Town has no waste policies in place to manage waste on site and within their offices. Both our essential and modular recommendations inform us this policy recommendation to help T-Town reach their waste diversion goal, as mentioned before. Policy is an effective way to limit users' waste production at the source, so we find it really important that Teton integrates this recommendation. Policies is also, it occurred in 100% of our case studies, which means that it's really important that they consider this. The Australian government implemented a waste policy that limited the amount of styrofoam and plastic bags that could be taken on site, as well as packaging materials, because these are hard to recycle. So we recommend using this as a model for our policy recommendation for Teton. In addition to enforcing green purchasing, which is considered like purchasing only eco-friendly, compostable, and recyclable materials, we also recommend purchasing green electronics with longer refresh rates, low environmental impacts, and lower energy consumption. So we're going to shift into our modular recommendations. Our first is updating the bins and signage system on site. This is a great opportunity to educate the users of their waste stream and within the community, because Teton serves as a pillar for environmental sustainability. We recommend that Teton also updates their receptacles in order to encourage users to reconsider their own personal consumption on site and at home. 6 out of our 10 case studies made significant updates to their bins and signage. Clear bins and signage limit contamination of waste streams that occurs on site. Users are more likely to dispose of waste incorrectly if they do not understand the waste systems that they're using. Teton currently has a multi-stream waste system, which we hope to improve and eventually come to a single stream system. By providing clearer signage and language at our waste receptacles, we hope that we can educate the users and encourage them to implement these strategies at home and within their communities outside of Teton. Our next is to reinstitute on-site composting. As Bobby mentioned, the green team that they had before, we're going to reinstitute the green team, and the green team will help manage on-site composting. Cutting organics sent to landfills helps combat climate change by preventing methane gas from being produced as it decomposes in landfills. Teton has a large amount of organic waste in the form of food scraps and biomass from their forest land on site. Managing organic waste would contribute significantly to reducing their waste reduction, or to reducing their waste that goes to landfill. As you can see, 90% of our case studies use instituted compost strategies on site. Yes.
So Isabel just went through some of the initiatives that Teton can take on themselves to deal with their waste. However, for certain kinds of waste, it is essential for Teton to enlist the help of a third party, since these waste streams are a little more complicated than things that they could do themselves. So our next recommendation, which is a modular recommendation, is that they contract with a private carter. Currently, Teton does have a contract with a private carter, however, it's a little complicated. Teton has a lot of yard waste from their 1,000 acres of forest land, which is being taken away by this carter. And the residential waste is supposed to be picked up by Westchester County. It is required for the municipality to pick that up for them. However, by fluke, the residential waste is also being picked up by this carter. So we don't know what sort of waste each of these two sites are generating, and as such the data is very mixed up. So the first thing that Teton needs to do is enlist separate carters for these different types of waste. For compost, zero to go, like Isabel mentioned earlier, Robert mentioned earlier, is a very good carter that we actually vetted and we went through, and we gave specific details to Teton. They're in close proximity to Teton, and they're available to provide Teton with specific compost related services. So specific carters like these are what Teton should go to for their yard waste. However, a large section of their waste is also going to be construction and demolition waste from the retrofitting and the other changes that they make to their energy infrastructure. As mentioned earlier, these are hazardous and hence they need a completely separate carting system. Junk Pluggers is another carter that we got in touch with once we received feedback from Teton that they were going to be producing these types of waste. and thus we got this cutter to as another possible option for T-Town to take away their construction and demolition waste. For construction and demolition waste, it is very important that such waste is sorted right in the beginning because sorting can help reduce 60 to 80% of the landfill fees, and this specific cutter allows T-Town to do so. Finally, e-waste is not only going to be a big part of their renovations in terms of the Columbia report, it's also stuff that they produce generally as an office. Since they have office spaces, they have e-waste in terms of printer cartridges or old printers, old computers. There are different ways that we've suggested that T-Town deal with this waste. One, that they can enlist a private cutter such as Synergy, but other options are also available. T-Town can submit some of this waste to Goodwill if it's in functional condition, and the other option is that they return it back to their manufacturer. There's a manufacturer's take-back program that exists. Westchester County provides a list of all of these manufacturers that T-Town should enlist, and this resource has been made available to T-Town.
In all of our recommendations, we highlight educational opportunities to increase the salience of these recommendations to T-Town, which is ingrained in the Westchester community. With our initiatives implemented, we hope that T-Town contributes to the pool of publicly accessible waste data and program implementation to deepen public understanding and serve as a model for other small environmentally conscious NGOs. As we developed our project and recommendations, our primary strategy shifted from high-tech, costly solutions like solar compaction bins to more top-down policy aimed at changing employee and visitor behavior patterns by providing necessary structural improvements and coupled with staff and user education. As we developed our project, we developed our Green Team initiative to prevent tensions of a top-down policy solution by giving voice to those that know T-Town the best, as everyday staff. It's the staff that are the stewards to the preservation and educate the 30,000 annual visitors. If a sustainability curriculum reaches even a third of those 30,000, T-Town sustainability practices could change waste production and resource consumption, reaching potentially thousands of people. Having an effective waste strategy is not only measured by percent diversion or money saved, but by impact. We learned that an effective waste management solution requires policy that includes employees and administration in the drafting process, and integration of ongoing sustainable education efforts, which would ensure a necessary shift in reduction in resource consumption and waste production. With collaboration of staff and users, T-Town can become a leader of waste reduction for small environmental nonprofits, Westchester County, and the greater New York area.
This project has been extremely rewarding for us because not only have we learned so much about why waste management is important to environmental sustainability, but we've also been able to help a small organization be a pioneer for environmental sustainability through their waste management practices. We hope that our presentation has given you a small glimpse into this world of solid waste. We thank you for listening to us today, and I'd like to invite the rest of the team up here so that we can take some questions.
So I know in New York City there are two streams of waste, like one being recycling, other one just being like cardboard, etc. But you said that you recommended a single stream for T-Town, and I was just wondering why single stream versus several streams?
Yeah, so in New York City we use a multi-stream bin system. We have like cardboard and rigid plastics, soft plastics are separate from that. And the idea behind using or moving toward a single stream system would be to capture more materials, because we use a single stream system here at NYU. It captures way more things like plastic bags, things like that. One of the issues with single stream though is that it becomes more contaminated when people are less used to using a system. So it's not an initial recommendation that we would make, but eventually it would be the ideal solution for that.
Can I ask about the impact, the sustainability impact of the things you give?
Yeah. So the whole idea
idea behind sustainability, as you probably know, is that you're trying to meet the needs of the current population without jeopardizing the needs of the future population. And I think that is exactly what this project and waste management is trying to accomplish. We're particularly trying to reduce our footprint, waste footprint. There's also a very big social impact. In addition to the waste footprint, you also have a general footprint, such as like the CO that you potentially will produce less of by diverting your waste. Yeah.
So you say they had this green team and then you want to bring it back, and then you alluded to some problems with the previous way it was organized. What specifically were the problems, and what would you change?
So originally their green team, they're having issues with maintained engagement, being that there's high staff turnover, and sometimes they were having issues with thinking that the compost bin was gross. So we tried to think around things like that. So for example, bringing back the green team we think is really important for all the reasons we listed. It's a really great way to lead the initiative, keep people engaged and all of those things. But we tried to make things like recommending composters that didn't actually require touching the compost material, things like that, so that the green team could like stay more engaged over time.
Also, when we met with the client, she did mention that current staff members seem a lot more open to the idea than maybe the previous ones that didn't work out. So maybe there's a younger generation more interested in something like that.
I'm curious about the scaling of this. So a lot of it was helpful to see what percentage of the case studies considered like made this recommendation. And I was thinking to myself, like, well, why can't you just create a document that is mostly right that would apply to every town in Westchester? And so like, I'm curious how much has to do with the granularity of what's happening specifically in T-Town, right? And if we want this to happen in as many places as possible, is there a different kind of document that might be applicable to the county at large or something like that?
I think that some of our recommendations are applicable to most places. For example, our compost recommendation is something that even households, individual households could use, and it's something that Westchester households could use, but there are some specific recommendations that we've made, such as changes to their compost, the sort of composting system that they're using, that are based mainly on the problems Teton had in the past. So although some of the initiatives can be scaled up, the list is tailored to the client's feedback. So
I'd also like to note that I think the main reason that we used government documents is that government documents are the only ones that are really available that gives us enough like metrics and information about it. So by producing a document for T-Town, it will allow similar organizations, like in the New York State area, for example, like the Environmental Conscious, to take this as we took government documents and use it to implement waste management.
I just saw that Riverkeeper was one of the case studies that you guys analyzed, and I was just wondering, I know they are working with Hudson and cleaning up the Hudson. I was wondering, what did you take from them that you implemented at T-Town?
Okay, we're recommending event waste, and they have a really cool event called the River Sweep, where they divert like 20,000 tons of waste a year or something from the Hudson River. So we wanted to use those initiatives that they organized that event around for our recommendation in waste management events.